On today's show, is Michael Porter Jr. a lock to be traded before the deadline? One NBA insider says yes. I'll tell you what I've been hearing about the MPJ sweepstakes and how I think Brooklyn should move forward on today's episode of Locked On Nets.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to Locked On Nets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Now the number one sports podcast network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I'm your host, Erik Slater, Brooklyn Nets beat reporter for ClutchPoints.com. Thank you for making me your first listen of the day. The show is 100% free on all those great platforms. And on today's episode, we're diving into some Michael Porter Jr. trade talk amid some reports about him potentially being a lock to be moved ahead of the deadline. Got Lucas Kaplan coming on to talk about that. Let's go. All right, got Lucas Kaplan on the show now, and we are here today to talk about Michael Porter Jr. and the trade sweepstakes surrounding him gaining some steam and a report from an insider about what his fate could be ahead of the deadline. But before we get into that briefly, the Nets did play a game earlier today. They lost 103-98 to the Grizzlies in Memphis on the front end of a back-to-back. Michael Porter Jr. did not play in that game. But, just briefly on this game, the Nets were down by 16, and they actually fought back despite, not having MPJ to take an 8-point lead with 3 minutes remaining. But then they allow the Grizzlies to close on an 11-0 run, and they struggled to score without MPJ. They were, they scored 98 points. They missed their last 5 or 6 shots after they took that 8-point lead. They didn't score over the final 3 minutes of the game. I thought Nolan Troy and Danny Wolf had some good moments. Jalen Wilson and Tyrese Martin cracked the rotation, and those guys made a very big difference with their shooting and their hustle. And then Jordy benched Cam Thomas down the stretch after he had some questionable decisions, despite the Nets not really having a shot creator or go-to scorer down the stretch. But nothing too crazy. I think it was a good effort by the Nets, and they came away with the loss, which is good at least for the draft positioning. And some of the rookies looked good. So nothing too crazy. But any takeaways that you had from that performance?
Yeah. It's Nolan's really getting the spacing of the NBA game down, and you could tell he's feeling more comfortable with just where his reads are going to be and stuff. Yet again, Day'Ron Sharp checks in, they're down 20. He checks out, they're down 5. It's just every game at this point. He was a +5. Tyrese Martin shoots the ball like he is Reggie Miller. He shoots, the fadeaway
I posted a clip of it on Twitter because he hit that shot, and I was like, holy crap. That was a really hard. That was like a Kobe shot from
bro. He shoots truly he's I shoot 50% from 3, whatever, bro. And the other thing, I thought Tim Capstar made a really good point on the broadcast. Yegor doesn't. It's not. Maybe it won't necessarily be about beating people off the dribble. Maybe it'll be, and we've seen it with the pump fakes and stuff. Maybe it'll be about beating people off the catch. And, the more he kind of pump fakes and goes and stuff like that, the more you kind of see this vision as an off-ball player. I don't even have a lot to say about Cam. I thought he was good in the first half, getting off the ball decently quickly. It's even when he wants to get off the ball, when the defense throws 2 at him, you can see him take a while to process it, but the second half, the fourth quarter, it is what it is. But like you said,
Yeah, I mean, the game, it was, I think, a good effort by a shorthanded Nets team, and we'll leave it at that. We'll see what they can do tomorrow. They go to Dallas. They'll get MPJ back for that game. So we'll see. But we are here to talk about Michael Porter Jr. because there has been a lot of smoke surrounding MPJ and the trade sweepstakes for him heating up. We're now 3 weeks away from that February 5th deadline. And one report that came out that was very notable was John Hollinger from The Athletic, who is a veteran reporter at this point and is a former front office executive with the Grizzlies, I believe. So is very tapped into what's going on around the league. And Hollinger said that a trusted league source told him that Michael Porter Jr. is a lock to be moved by the Nets before the deadline so that the Nets can sell high on his career year. So we're going to talk about that. What I saw this and I asked around after, and from what I've heard, it has been described to me as the Nets haven't been actively shopping MPJ, but they have been taking calls from a handful of teams on MPJ. I don't know how deep those talks have gotten, but they are, more than comfortable from what I've heard holding him through the deadline. So like Hollinger says that this is a lock for him to be traded. I'm sure obviously that the Nets have their price of what it will take to move him. So my read on this situation of Hollinger saying that it's a lock is more so a testament to MPJ's market heating up to the point where like the Nets are comfortable holding him through the deadline. They have their price that it would take for them to move off of him. But the market for MPJ, with him being one of the only, significant needle movers on the market at the deadline, that market kind of, raising the likelihood that the Nets are going to be able to get the return that they're looking for ahead of the deadline. So that's my read on the situation based off of what I've heard. What do you think, Lucas?
I just think it's breaking well for them right now. Like it appears that MPJ, I mean, when you think about this trade deadline, right? Last year, there's no Jimmy Butler that's seemingly obviously available, especially with the big former All-Star and Trae Young already having been moved. I know his value wasn't super high, obviously, but who else are we really hearing like, oh man, a contender like could really use this player and this player? I'm sure there's names I'm forgetting and acquisitions that'll help good teams, but especially when you look at wings, right? This news that the Pelicans aren't looking to trade Herb or Trey Murphy.
It was Trey Murphy. Like you were just saying, like who are these guys? Like
the
name that was on the market that was perceivably going to demand more in terms of return than MPJ was Trey Murphy. And Chris Haynes came out and said that the Nets are holding on to Zion, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, all of these guys. So with that, it's like, there's not really this other like big time needle mover. And there's a lot of teams that are trying to make their move right now. So go on. But there just isn't that guy outside of MPJ, it seems like.
No, yeah. And like I'm sympathetic to the argument that they shouldn't trade him. And I've talked myself into it, even if the extension is like $50 million a year. But do you think it would feel like a missed opportunity not to trade like the belle of the ball this trade season?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think that if they held on to him that it's like a fireable offense or anything like that for Sean Marks or this front office. But I've been pretty clear in my opinion that if they can get a good return for him, which based on how this is lining up, it seems like it's going to. I just don't think that they can pass up the opportunity to trade him. And if Michael Porter Jr., and that's no slight onto the way that Michael Porter Jr. is playing or the kind of player he is, it's more so saying for me, the timeline, I don't think he's a fit. I know the Nets need good players. They're going to try to be more competitive this coming season. But you and I have had the brief conversation on here of just because you owe that swap to Houston doesn't mean that you shouldn't be trying to optimize your long-term outlook and your rebuild outlook. And the bottom line is Michael Porter Jr. is a player who, by the time that the Nets are really in contention is probably going to be pushing 30. He has a very significant injury history. And I know a lot of people have come back at me and other people who have talked about that and been he's been an Iron Man the last 2 years. It's look, I understand that. I hope that he stays healthy. He had 3 back surgeries earlier in his career and he wears a one-of-a-kind brace to even be able to move around the court. So just this idea that he's just going to be a clean bill of health well into his 30s and keep this level of production up, it's no guarantee. So all of those things, the timeline, his injury history, what they can get for him, also their draft lottery odds, I haven't even factored that into the conversation with what I'm saying right now. All those factors, I do think it would be a missed opportunity if they can get the kind of return that people are kind of starting to make it sound like they could.
Right. Let's say it's 2 first-round picks, and I think it's silly to play this is what this pick is going to be, unless it's this year, right? Unless it's a Detroit first this year, then you can kind of project what it's going to be. But I do think there's some credence to the argument. Okay, depending on what the picks are, you're talking about, most likely expected value in the 20s, and then what you're giving up, right, is a guy let's say you have to extend him at $50 million, right? Let's say he's making 40, he's going to want a pay raise. I've been thinking about it, and $50 million next year is less than a third of the cap. It goes down in every subsequent year, right? He could clearly scale up a little bit in a well-designed offense as he has under Jordy, and he can also be a bridge contract that you trade when eventually it is time to go all in for a star. He can play next to that star. You know, there's ways to maneuver where he doesn't kill your tank this year. I'm kind of coming around to like, I'm feeling pretty 50-50 these days.
Are you saying 50 million annually?
Yeah.
Oh, no way.
He's making 40.
Dude.
I mean, but he's making 40
million annually, dude. No.
Okay.
That's way too much for me, for my blood. I mean,
but what do you think he's going to ask for?
Are you saying on like a 1 or a 2 year deal? I mean, like even then, like, dude, that's a lot of money. I mean, I know like the cap is rising. I know you said it's going to be less than a third of the cap. He's not. I don't think he's getting that much money on the market. Like he could ask for it. I don't think he's getting it. Like a lot of people have the injury concerns that I'm talking about. Like that is a very real thing for him around the league. Like if he's making 37 now, like I could see his neck because his contract. Like, we've spoken about it in the past. His contract just this past summer was viewed as a negative asset or like close to it at least. Like I don't think he's getting a pay raise, a significant one. Like. Yeah, I think it would probably come in like somewhere in the 30, probably 35 to 40 range. Like that
I mean, if you can get 30, I'm like kind of not trading him. I mean,
yeah, I think 30 is low. I think it'll probably come close to like what his contract's at right now. Maybe a slight raise. Maybe I'm not underselling it.
I mean, I'm not gonna like. I don't want to run this segment too long. I'm not gonna like try to guess his market too much. But if you're him and his representation, right? Hey. I make $40 million right now. The cap is going up. I've proven that I can be a super valuable tertiary option on a championship winning team. You guys love me. This marriage has been great. You know, I've also proven that I can scale up under this coach. Like, why shouldn't I get a pay raise? And I'm not saying that the market doesn't come into play, but like it is 45 million is like a quarter of the cap going forward.
I get the sell from if I were his agent in his camp, that's exactly what I would be saying. And I understand that. And I'm not even saying he doesn't have a good case for that. I'm saying if I'm the Nets with where I'm at in my situation, I'm not paying him like over $40 million a year, especially on like a 3 or 4 year contract. My point with this is like, he's been producing at this level for the Nets. And I'm not saying he can't continue to do it. He's been doing it for 3 months.
A month.
Like, 2 months, like less. Like there's significant injury concerns. Like if the Nets pass up on whatever they can get for him and they keep him and they sign him to an exorbitant extension and then his numbers just like really come back to earth and there's the injury concern, that can be a really detrimental move to a rebuild in my opinion.
He seems pretty like, I don't see his numbers falling off that much. Again, barring
not like
injury
a ton
or whatever. He like the way he shoots and the way he like operates off the ball and how we've already seen him next to like high usage players. He really doesn't seem to like he has such a low floor. And I don't know. I'm kind of, you know, presenting the heightened version of the devil's advocate here because, you know, for like most of the season I've been like, yeah, you got to cash out on this. But my point is I could see the argument and I don't think that the difference between, listen, if you're the Nets, right, and the difference is 45 million annually or 40, like that shouldn't be enough to change how you feel about him long term. If it's a max contract at 60 versus your valuation at 35, then okay, that might be irreconcilable. But if it's like 50 versus 40 even, I'm like, I don't know, man, you know, like money, we're inflation, man.
I'm much more open to the idea of keeping him if they kept him through the deadline, and then all of a sudden he has a back flare up or a hamstring injury, quotation marks for those listening on the audio platform, and they can kind of keep their draft lottery odds like at a point where it's where they're trying to be, because that is like a goal this season. Like that can't we've gone probably too long in the podcast without talking about that. Like that's a real thing.
If they mess up, listen. Maybe I shouldn't have this level of trust in them, but if they want to keep MPJ, I foolishly trust them to do that and execute this tank. And
even though they've not done that at any point up to this, like I agree with you. I'm just saying I understand people who are skeptical.
Yeah, if they tie their own shoes together and trip over their own feet, then yeah, we're all screwed. But like, yeah, man, if you want to keep MPJ and tank, like you don't have your pick, you have a swap next year, you want to be good. This is your chance to add this top end talent in the draft. Nothing should get in the way of that. And if you have to wink, wink, handshake, extend MPJ right now and wait to make it official till June, then you do that and you tank. But I don't know. Maybe I'm giving them too much credit.
For me, we're going to get into the second segment about the price and what we think the return is going to look like. But for me, it really comes down to kind of two questions here. Like, do you think at his age and with where the Nets are at with their timeline, can he be a part, like a legitimate contributor at the point when they're actually in contention? And the second question in conjunction with that, is this the highest that you think his trade value is ever going to be in the best situation to trade him?
I think we should answer those starting next segment because I have some thoughts, especially on the first one.
Okay, there we go. That is the segue into the second segment. But with this report that Michael Porter Jr. might be a lock to be moved before the deadline, which teams are involved? What have I been hearing on that front? What do I think packages could look like? How should the Nets consider them? There's even been some Ja Morant talk. We'll get into all that when we continue Locked On Nets after a quick break. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern and become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Open the FanDuel app during Happy Hour, and you'll always see something new. Boosts, bonuses, and surprises. It's easy to check the weekly special before tip-off and make a move before the window closes. The timing is perfect, right before the games and right before the weekend starts. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Coming back from the break, continuing today's Locked On Nets episode, talking about Michael Porter Jr.'s trade market and a report from John Hollinger of The Athletic that he is a lock to be traded ahead of the deadline. And I said that, a handful of teams have at least called in, talking about Michael Porter Jr. in a trade with the Nets. I don't know how deep those conversations have gotten, but the two teams that seem to be at the forefront of the conversations right now are the Golden State Warriors and the Milwaukee Bucks. So let's talk about both of those teams first. First, let's talk about just like the price that we see for MPJ briefly. I think that some Nets fans, they're probably not going to like hearing this. I think they need to reevaluate their expectations for what an MPJ return is going to be. Because I'm seeing from some fans, like, unless we get a Mikal Bridges type package or unless we get a star level haul, like, we can keep him. Like, if that's your view and you want to keep him, that's fine. But like, they're not getting like 3 first-round picks for Michael Porter Jr., I don't think. Like, that's like 2, I think, would be, feasible depending on whether they're like good first-round picks or not. But they're not getting like a star-level package for Michael Porter Jr. That's my read on the situation.
You're saying that trading Mikal Bridges for 5 first-round picks and a swap, it may have tainted Brooklyn fans' view of an acceptable trade package?
A little bit. I think Michael Porter Jr., I think people are getting a little bit, out in front of their skis with what the return should be.
What I was going to say in the last segment and kind of transition here is that before you contend, you have to not be 11-24 or whatever their record is, right? So I think if you want to keep MPJ, you can't just be like, well, does the timeline add up with contention? If the timeline adds up with you just like being respectable and good, then, that's step one.
Yeah, like a bridge guy. Like, you need bridge guys to get you there. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
Right. So you don't necessarily, I see your point on the whole, and I don't really disagree with it entirely, but you can't go straight from this team, which really doesn't have a lot, to contention. However, when you're thinking about contending teams, right, and the price they're willing to pay, I'm like, listen, the Warriors seem far away for MPJ to be like the remainder of their draft capital to upgrade. But
they're not doing the remainder of their draft capital. I mean, they have like
what do they have?
4 first-round picks that they can trade. They have all their first-round picks moving forward.
They do?
So I think two is
like the goal.
Would go, and I don't even know if they're going to go to 2. I'm not sure.
2 is the goal, and like, I think if you're 0 to 100, best percent outcome, 100th percentile outcome is like 2 unprotected first round picks. I don't think that's happening.
I don't
if
either.
I had to guess. I think the pathway to it would, I guess, be like, salary from Sacramento, and they apparently like Kuminga, right? And so you get this trade that I've seen a version of on the trade machine a million times, but does actually make sense. Like salary to the Nets, Kuminga to the Kings and Warriors give draft capital to the Nets. I think you can probably finagle like an unprotected and a medium protected first to the Nets,
I think that's
how much they like MPJ.
I think that's feasible. I don't think the Kings were offering a first round pick for Kuminga in the summer, so I don't see why that would be the case now after he continued to not crack the Warriors rotation. But like the deal last thing on MPJ, like what I think the value is going to come out to, I think their Nets are probably looking at what the realistic return will be is like one good distant unprotected first round pick, or like maybe 2 shorter term first round picks that don't have the same kind of upside. Like that's probably what I think they're looking at. And for the Warriors, if we're talking about the package, like the package is pretty clear, at least in terms of the salary filler. Like it's Kuminga, probably Moses Moody, probably Buddy Hield. So you have those 3 guys. And then do you maybe, like if you're talking 2 first round picks, probably maybe their first round pick this year and then 2028 versus having like a 2029 or 2031 unprotected first round pick where there has more upside on the pick. And like you said, like Kuminga, the Nets don't really want Kuminga, but my issue with like the idea of rerouting him to Sacramento, which is something that a lot of people have talked about, is if the Nets send him to Sacramento in that deal, they're taking back like DeMar DeRozan or Malik Monk, who have extended contracts, and money that I don't even want on the books. Jonathan Kuminga has a team option next year. He's basically an expiring contract. I'd rather just keep that and have all that cap space to do other things.
I would too. And like, shout out the legendary Bob of Nets Daily broke this down for me. They have 11 total picks, including second rounders, in 2029 and 2030. The Nets do. Like their picks are far out, and given the fact that this timeline seems to be what it is, they just drafted 5 guys. They got this premium pick this upcoming draft. It feels like they would want those further out picks, and not just for the reason that everybody wants, further out picks, but because like that's going to be how they upgrade the team in the intermediate future. It's not going to be, the 21st overall pick this year is definitely going to be a part of our 7-man rotation in 2 years. Like it seems much more feasible to think, well, if we get like a medium-ish protected 2029 first, that can be flipped over the next couple years for that sort of 6th, 7th, like a rotation player. So I think that's a really good point that you made about the distance, how far out the picks are as being a sticking point, I'm sure, on negotiations.
Yeah, and or even like you said for a 6th or 7th man, or even for a star. Like you just talked about like trading, like MPJ could be this bridge guy, and I like completely agree. But I think the Nets could also be looking at this like, look, if we can get a really juicy pick for MPJ, whether a distant post-Steph Curry unprotected Warriors pick or a post-Giannis Antetokounmpo unprotected Bucks pick, then you have the unprotected Nuggets pick. You have that other unprotected pick. You have a lot of other picks. Whenever that star or like whenever other really good player comes available in the next coming seasons, that is the basis of a trade package that could be like the most competitive package that anybody has to offer, or very close to it. So that is like a part of the equation, I think, for sure.
Definitely. Well, Giannis is going to be playing will he or won't he with Kevin Porter III in 2060 for the Bucks. So
exactly. Speaking of the Bucks, let's get into the Bucks, because we just outlined the Warriors package and what that could look like, and the Bucks are the other team who I think are a very realistic team, and I think that it speaks like if the Nets are looking like we talked about this being the best time for them to trade MPJ in terms of like, is this the highest value and everything is lining up perfectly for them, or not perfectly, but very well. I would say like you look at teams that have some level of desperation. Like you look at the Warriors who have an aging Steph Curry who is still just playing like, out of his mind, like this like unicorn old type player. Like you feel some kind of obligation to at least try to like go for it with him there. You look at the Bucks, who are doing, seemingly everything they can to try to keep Giannis Antetokounmpo. Those are teams that have some level of desperation. And we just talked about the Warriors. And for the Bucks, I think the package is looking at like probably Kyle Kuzma, as the main salary filler, several other like smaller salary fillers, like smaller contracts to get you up to MPJ's number, and then their 2031 or 2032 unprotected first round pick. And that is a pick that if the Nets could come away with that, if you like told me before the Nets made the Cam Johnson trade that they could come away with, post 2030 unprotected picks from the Nuggets and the Milwaukee Bucks, I'd be like, Sean Marks is like a miracle worker. Like that would be unbelievable work. And if they can do that, I would have my eye on that pick.
Yeah, then you are essentially turning Cam Johnson into those two picks, like you said. And MPJ has really been, I don't want to diminish what he's been doing too much, but 2 months, solid play. They haven't played a game that even like halfway matters in terms of playoff contention or whatever. You would have to do that, I think, given the way they've operated. The only question is, again, like how much I think people are worried about giving the Rockets a premium pick next year in the swap. But yeah, I say I don't want to discount MPJ, what he's done for the Nets, but at the same time, like you look at his stats, I'm just like, I haven't pulled up, like the fact that he is shooting 40% from three on 14 3-point attempts per 100.
Ridiculous.
The way he shoots them is like, I'm getting ready to say some outlandish things about where he is like as an all-time great shooter.
Yeah, no, he's been ridiculous. And that's why, like, I'm not shut off to the idea of them keeping him. But if they're like getting offered these distant, unprotected picks, also like expiring salary, like, and also like the trades that we just lined up, this could very well open into 3-team trades. Like there's so many other possibilities of how this could work out that you can't even like begin to, outline because there's just too many possibilities. But like if they can get those unprotected picks, you also maybe can get an inspiring contract. And I've said this, like if they get that expiring contract like that, they have the potential to just turn this into more picks. And I know that people like come back at me and they're like, you have all these picks, like picks can't play. Like at some point you need players. I'm like, that's very true. But like Sean Marks has done pretty well trading. And if you have all these picks and all this ammo and you're in the New York market and you have a coach in Jordi Fernandez who looks good, like there's just a lot of opportunities that arise from that. So I think both of us have kind of a similar viewpoint on this. We'll see how it plays out. But the last thing I want to close this out with is John Morant to the Nets. There's, John Hollinger in the same article had some speculation and had some talk about it. And I've talked to some people around the league who say that it's not as crazy as, some people I think would like to let on. So what could that situation look like? Would we have any interest in that for the Nets? We'll get into all that when we close out Locked On Nets after a quick break. Guys, during basketball season, there's nothing like being in the building, the energy, the crowd, that first big run that gets everyone on their feet. Fans want to be there for those moments, not stuck refreshing screens or guessing what tickets are really going to cost. That's where Game Time comes in. The Game Time app gives fans the advantage back, making it incredibly easy to score amazing tickets, fast, simple, and without the guesswork. Guys, browsing the Game Time app is straightforward and intuitive. Finding tickets takes just a few taps. Seeing the view from your seat before buying makes choosing tickets easy and confident, and prices include fees up front, so the total is clear from the start. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app and get in on the action. All right, coming back from the break, closing out today's Locked On Nets episode with Lucas Kaplan, talking about MPJ's trade market and what a potential return could look like. And could that return include John Morant, a player who is obviously a distressed asset at this point? Shams Charania reported earlier this week that the Grizzlies are officially listening to offers for him, which means that they're going to move off of him ahead of the deadline. And with that, John Hollinger in the same article where he said that Michael Porter Jr. is a lock to be traded, the article was about John Morant, potential returns. And he did mention the Nets as a potential trade suitor for John Morant in this MPJ sweepstakes. And, there was kind of a lot of different machinations of what it could look like, but kind of the framework would be like the Nets getting John Morant, the Grizzlies, the Nets getting John Morant, Michael Porter Jr. going to a third team, and then the Grizzlies getting some like expiring salaries and other stuff, and the Nets splitting like the draft capital that went back from MPJ. So my initial read on that is I'm not really interested in John Morant. Like he's a player that is not playing well. Like he doesn't look the same athletically as he used to. He's a terrible 3-point shooter. He doesn't play great defense at the point of attack, in my opinion. I wouldn't be that interested in him, but I think there is at least a conversation of like, if there's a 3-team trade where the Nets for MPJ can get John Morant and like a first-round pick alongside him, you at least have to have a conversation and think about it.
Yeah, let me be a lot less verbose than that. That's not happening. That's just not happening. I listen, Hollinger, I don't think that he's the type of that he is the resume to put stuff out there just for, clout or attention or whatever, that he doesn't really hear stuff. And he certainly, whatever source said, like MPJ is a lock to get traded. I don't know if that is necessarily true, but that source 100% knows their stuff. But in terms of, he was kind of speculating more on.
Yeah, I'll say the source, the MPJ lock to be traded was sourced. The Morant thing was more speculative, but I don't know if he did say if there was no shot of it happening.
He did say deep dark horse. This is not pile on Hollinger hour, but like it's just not happening.
He's not a Nets guy. I think we can say that confidently on or off the court. But I do think like he is an interesting like buy low candidate in the sense that if you can turn MPJ into John Morant and you can get like a draft asset alongside him, and John Morant only has 2 more years. Like we just talked about MPJ as this bridge guy. Like I don't like John Morant as a long-term fit, but I think the Nets would have a serious conversation about it at least.
As someone, and they should, and like as someone who does think the pendulum has swung too far back on like John Morant, I would probably be more open to it than the Nets are, but there's a very real argument, and one I think I would make, especially at their price point, where like MPJ is a secondary or tertiary option next to a star or on a good team, might at this point, if we just take the last 2 or 3 years, right, including this season of basketball, might just be a better player to have on your team than John Morant. Like,
I don't disagree.
And so if we're just trading straight up the better player for the less impactful player, where there's a worse fit, if you think of anything of Nolan or maybe even Yegor as like a long-term ball handler, but I really don't. But if we're doing that instead of trading MPJ for like future assets and picks, it's like, well,
what's the point?
We got to MPJ from Cam. Why are we now like going in reverse? And with what you said about the Nets and their front office, like, I'm sorry, guys, it's just not happening.
I was texting with somebody, a different person like throughout the league who like knows some of their stuff. And we were like kind of going back and forth about this situation. And I was kind of like saying like, he's just not a Nets guy. Like, I don't see that. And he was kind of trying to talk me into it. And I was like, all right, like maybe. And then I go on Twitter and coincidentally, I just see the picture of John Morant in the strip club with the stripper on top of him, where like the whole ground is just covered in money, like all around him. And that just popped up on my feed. And I was like, that's not a great omen. I think in terms of his Nets fit, but
hey, well, neither were some of MPJ's off-court activities. So
yeah, I mean, I think MPJ's kind of pale in comparison to John Morant. We don't need to get too deep into that conversation, but yeah, like what you said, like if it was straight up going from MPJ to John Morant, MPJ only has 1 year left on his contract. John Morant has 2. I also think that MPJ like has just proven to be a much more impactful player as of late. So I wouldn't be too interested in that. The way that I would have some interest in it is if the Nets could like get the draft asset, like maybe a draft asset that they were looking for alongside John Morant, maybe, but I just like don't think that that's all that likely. So I don't see it as, something where, they should do it. I don't see it as something that's all that realistic, but I do see it as something where they would at least have a conversation, because like John Morant not too long ago was viewed as a certain level of guy. And if you put aside all the character concerns, which might be tough for the Nuts front office, like if you said that you could turn Cam Johnson into like a good first round pick, a Mev first round pick, and John Morant, like that would have sounded like lunacy like not too long ago.
Hey, well, so so would this entire Nets franchise, their recent history. I don't know. It'd be fun. It's not happening, but it would be fun. I know Nick Claxton has kind of smirked and talked about like playing with Ja in the past.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see, but yeah, I think the moral of the story here is that MPJ's market seems to be heating up. It seems to be, a decent chance, I would say, that he's going to get moved. And like this stuff really, like the fact that you're hearing all of this, on what are we at right now? On January 11th, like teams don't really get serious about this stuff a lot of the time until like a few weeks towards the trade deadline. So the fact that you're already hearing about this stuff now, I think that is a pretty, telling sign in regards to where MPJ's trade market could go. It also must be said that Jonathan Kuminga, who's going to be a main figure in this as the main salary filler for the Warriors, I think is eligible to be traded January 15th. So once we get past that date, there's going to be a lot more, kind of going on there. And there's also like, it would benefit the Nets if they're going to trade him, and you kind of have a good sense of what the market's going to be to get him, to get rid of him as soon as possible. Like that is something. And last thing I want to close it out on is like, just on this Hollinger thing, like we've seen Bob Nets Daily has been tweeting about it like incessantly today that, Hollinger said that, but you have Mike Scotto, you have Mark Stein, you have these other people saying that like the Nets may very well keep MPJ. I've heard similar things, and I agree with that. But I don't think like that was very strong wording from Hollinger. And I don't think that he's just putting that out like unless he had some pretty good intel on it. Like that's as a former like front office guy and somebody who's, a credible reporter at this point, like that was pretty strong language.
Yeah. And he doesn't need to, I don't think The Athletic is like knocking down his door, begging him for scoops to fill a word count. I think he doesn't quite have to pander that way. So yeah, I mean, listen, I think one of the things Bob tweeted is right. Like the Nets are a much less leaky organization than they've been in years past. Like didn't really hear a ton about McHale or the Houston trade before that. Same thing with like Cam Johnson for MPJ, maybe a little bit more, but if I remember correctly, it wasn't like we knew it was coming for days. So, we'll see.
We definitely will see. Lucas, the Nets got the Dallas Mavericks in Dallas, and then they are going to be back in action on Wednesday and then another game on Friday. So we'll definitely have you back on here, but appreciate you taking the time as always, man.
I'm hearing that game in Dallas is going to decide Rookie of the Year.
That does it for today's episode of Locked On Nets. If you guys do not already, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Nets on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, whether Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you enjoy the content, take a second right now, smash that like button, leave a comment, leave a 5-star review. Anything you could do to engage is much appreciated. But the Nets are going to be back in action on Monday against the Dallas Mavericks. So I have coverage of all that and more when I'm back tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.